Nation, good morning. It's Mitchell Rettens, your host of the Raiders Report, with some major Raiders rumors from ESPN, NFL insiders after the NFL Scouting Combine. Things that we're going to be talking about today because there was an article released by Jeremy Fowler, by Dan Graziano, titled 2026 NFL Combine Buzz, Intel on Free Agency, Trades, and Quarterbacks. They talk about Geno Smith. They talk about Maxx Crosby. They talk about a potential free agent wide receiver that apparently the Silver and Black have been eyeing. Also, a player that apparently the Raiders are hoping to re-sign, and then a potential trade candidate about a player on the market as it stands right now. And according to Fowler, the Raiders are interested. Hey, man, I know that we did a lot of NFL Combine buzz, but I'm not going to lie to y'all. I am super happy to be here at the house again with my wife Alex, with my dog Chuck. It's where I'm going to be today. But y'all already know, I'm going to get you a video every single day on this channel. And even though today is my wife and I's 6-year anniversary, when Raiders news ends up going down, she's dancing in the background. When Raiders news ends up going down, I'm going to do my best to keep you guys up to date. Hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. So let's first talk about this article, and I'm going to read through the article because there is a lot of good blurbs in here, and I'll kind of give you my 2 cents on what I'm thinking about what Graziano and what Fowler ultimately reporting from the Combine. The first thing is around Geno Smith, and this part of the article is titled, "Does quarterback Smith have a sneaky market?" According to Graziano, multiple coaches from teams looking to add a quarterback told me that they were eager to see whether the Raiders would release Smith because they thought his tape from last season suggested he was held back by the Raiders offensive system, which, there was a reason why the Raiders players gave Chip Kelly, our old offensive coordinator, an F on the grades. I actually think Kelly's the very first coordinator of all time to get an F grade, which I think does speak volumes about just how the disconnect and how bad that overall Raiders offense was. And, whether you can say what you want about Geno now, don't get me wrong, I supported Geno Smith, but that's because the tape in 2024, 2023, 2022 really illustrated the quarterback that was going to be a top 15 guy that had top 10 upside. So, I can understand coaches, organizations out there going, was it Geno Smith being really bad? Or was it the Las Vegas Raiders being an absolute shit show? And I think it was the Raiders being a shit show on top of the fact that Geno Smith was a disaster on and he was a disaster off the field. Let's go to the next part, though, of this blurb from Graziano. The Raiders are expected to select Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza with the first pick of the draft, but they're telling people they'd rather not play a rookie QB in week 1. So because they have to pay Smith anyway, they could keep him, start him until Mendoza is ready. If they part ways, there will be interest in Smith. So I know that John Spytek and Clint Kubiak really haven't committed to Fernando Mendoza being the week 1 starter, but I'm not going to say that Mark Davis is going to be the one that calls the shots here, because he's not. But I know this, Mark Davis is all in on Fernando Mendoza. And I think what people got to realize of what's being reported from the Combine, somebody that was, literally there, it's the Raiders don't want to put Fernando Mendoza in a situation that isn't successful for Mendoza. And right now, you got to think about what this Raiders team looks like right now. The way that it looks like right now, if you were to put Mendoza out there on that field, yeah, it's probably not the best idea. So I think what you're hearing Kubiak, what you're hearing Spytek, what you're hearing a lot of these insiders say is the way that the Raiders feel right now. And the way that the Raiders feel right now is if we had games today, I don't think I would put Fernando Mendoza out there on the field, but you have over $100 million in salary cap space, top 2 money around all NFL teams. You have 10 total draft picks. And I think just because it's something that we're hearing now doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen in week 1. I'm still going to be a believer that Fernando Mendoza will be the Las Vegas Raiders week 1 starter. And if he's not the Silver and Black's week 1 starter, I think that that's Tom Brady, John Spytek looking at themselves in the mirror a little bit and going, I don't think we did a good enough job in free agency. I don't think we did a good enough job this offseason, because I will agree, you got to make sure that you are putting Mendoza in the best situation possible from top to bottom, because you don't want to ruin the quarterback. And I know that they're going to be patient. I know that they're going to roll with him, because I think at the end of the day, Clint Kubiak understands. If Mendoza's good, I got a job. If Mendoza's not any good, I'm going to be on the hot seat, and I don't want the Raiders to move on from Clint. I want Clint and Mendoza to really be, a part of this organization for the next 3 to 4 years. I think it's what a smart organization would do. If you're going to allow Clint to draft a quarterback, allow Clint to learn with that young quarterback that he's bringing in here. But I will say, I still expect the Silver and Black to move on from Geno Smith the way that the money ends up working out, because it's the third day of the new league year. So the third day of the new league year is March 13th. I know I've said before on the show March 14th. I'm just bad at math. March 11th, though, is the first day of the new league year. So it's March 11th, March 12th, March 13th. That's the third day. That's the day that Geno Smith's contract does really become officially official. So, that's kind of be the day that we got to decide what we're going to do with Geno. If the Raiders trade away Geno, you save $26 million. But that means the team has to take on that entirety of that contract. If the Raiders decide to cut Geno, then they're going to eat $18.5 million. That's Mark Davis eating that money. You still save $8 million. Because Geno doesn't want to be a part of this organization anymore, the Raiders will try to trade Geno. And if a team offers them a 7th-round pick, the Silver and Black are going to take it. If the Raiders, though, can't find a trade partner, then they're going to end up cutting him, and they're going to move on. Geno wants out, and I think that the Raiders also do truly want out of that Smith contract. So, if the Raiders want to start a QB, I am not saying it's going to be Aiden O'Connell. I think that they would probably try to go out and they would try to add somebody else into the mix here to just be a little bit more competition. But at the end of the day, I don't think Geno Smith's going to be a member of this team, and I do think Fernando Mendoza will be the Silver and Blacks' Week 1 starter this upcoming season. Let's now go to the next topic here on the show, and it's around the wide receiver market. According to, again, this is an article by Fowler, and this is an article by Dan Graziano. Some around the league are linking Rashid Shaheed to the Raiders. The feeling is that Las Vegas likes him a lot, though it will be selective at the position if the money gets out of hand. So from being at the Combine, I would say the number one position that I'm a little bit worried about of how the Raiders are going to figure it out in free agency is the wide receiver market. Alec Pierce could get much more than I ever anticipated that he was going to be able to get. I don't think that Indianapolis is going to franchise tag him, because if they do, you're looking at about $28 million. And again, I love me some Alec Pierce. He's the number one receiver that I want the Raiders to go out and get. But $28 million for Alec Pierce also is... it's a little bit too rich for my blood. It would be kind of like how when we looked at that Trevon Merrick deal last offseason when he went to Carolina, we liked him. We knew he was a good player. But, he got 3 years, $59 million. That's way too much money for Trevon Merrick as far as my book. Like the player, a little bit too much rich. For Rashid Shaheed, though, there's some rumors right now that he could get $15 million. And I know that he's got the connections to Clint Kubiak. He was there with them in New Orleans in 2024. Kubiak becomes the OC with the Seattle Seahawks during the NFL trade deadline. Seattle makes the deal for Rashid Shaheed, and he did a lot of really special things for them at special teams, punt returner especially. Used him a little bit as an outside receiver. But I think the other thing that Raider fans got to think about, and this is even something that I had to think about, because I saw the way that Kubiak used Rashid Shaheed with New Orleans. And I didn't really pay attention to it as closely as what I have recently of how they used him in New Orleans. But once that trade ended up going down, you're looking at a 9-game sample size. A 9-game sample size where Rashid Shaheed with Clint Kubiak, with Andrew Janocko, with Rick Dennison. I'm not saying the offense is not all that much different, I think, of what we're going to try to run this upcoming season. But, Rashid Shaheed had 26 targets, 15 catches, 199 yards, no touchdowns. That's a 9-game sample size. That's not a receiver that you pay $15 million to, quite frankly. I think that's a receiver that you don't even pay $8 million to. So if Rashid Shaheed's looking to get 15 mil, I don't know if the Raiders are going to be that team that goes out and gets him for that price tag. I'm not saying that I don't think the Silver and Black are interested. Of course, I think that the Raiders would be interested. We need help on special teams. We need a deep threat. And we need somebody that's got some of that continuity with Clint Kubiak. But I am somebody that looks at what just happened. And if Rashid Shaheed's going to garner a $15 million per year deal, after what I just saw, the way Kubiak used Shaheed, Maybe it's just because he felt that was the best way to use him that season and that year with that football team. You can't argue the results. They ended up winning the Super Bowl. But again, 26 targets, 15 catches, 199 yards, no touchdowns for Rashid Shaheed in the 9 games last season on Seattle. That's not a wide receiver 1. It's not a wide receiver 2. That is a decoy deep threat. And if they want to use him that way, that's not somebody you pay $15 million to. But if you were to bring him in, Trey Tucker, Rashid Shaheed, Jack Besh, I think you'd have to look at another wide receiver potentially in the draft as well. Let's go to one more name here. It's going to be Eric Stokes. And according to this article, again from Fowler and Graziano, Raiders cornerback Eric Stokes. Here's another corner, well-positioned. Teams liked his tape last season when he was fully healthy, finally healthy. At the Combine, I tried to reach out. I actually had the opportunity to speak with Fowler, and we spoke, multiple different times. I would see him walking around the Combine, and I would, pick his brain from time to time. I did try to look for Graziano. I found Graziano once or twice. He was a little bit more difficult for me to talk to just because he was a little bit more busy, I guess, is probably the best way that I could put it, where Fowler, stopped what he was doing, and he was like, sure, I'll talk to you. Graziano was kind of like, I'm too busy right now, which it is what it is. It happens a lot more often than what you would think. It's probably one of the hard pills that you got to swallow when you're at the Combine. It's not everybody's going to make time for you, and that's just the way that it is. Some people you get to meet are really cool. Some people you get to meet and you realize, man, just because you're on TV doesn't mean that you're a good person, right? I will. Not now. Sorry, Alex, we're trying to figure out some stuff. But when it comes to Stokes, it was made very clear at the Combine that the Raiders and Stokes are both mutually interested in being able to find a contract that gets Stokes back in Las Vegas and gets the Raiders their number 1 cornerback from last season. So what I'm going to hit you with here is going to be a question. It's going to be the pinned comment on today's show, and I know it's a little bit later, but that's what happens when I make videos here at home. And we just talked about Rashid Shaheed. We talked about Eric Stokes. Let's play a little bit of a game here. It's what I like to do on the Raiders Report after all. Would you rather re-sign Eric Stokes or would you rather sign Rashid Shaheed? Let's just say you can only pick one. Let's say you're sitting in that room with Brady, with Spytek, with Clint Kubiak, right? Whoever the hell you want to sit in that room with. And they ask you, re-sign Eric Stokes or sign Rashid Shaheed? My answer is going to be coming up right here after this YouTube ad break. The reason why I'm going to say re-sign Eric Stokes over Rashid Shaheed is because I believe that our need at corner and the price tag that you're going to be able to get with Stokes is better than our need for a receiver like Rashid Shaheed. I love Rashid Shaheed. I think he is an outstanding player. But I also think that Shaheed's going to be somewhere around that $15 million per year mark, where I think Stokes is going to be a little bit closer to like $10 million a year. And I'm not saying that Stokes is a better player than Rashid Shaheed because I actually don't really know. I don't really know. Like, to be quite frank, I think the way that the Raiders probably answer the question that I just gave you, it probably comes down to more of what they think about the players in the draft. Like, if they don't love the corners as much as they do the wide receivers, then you re-sign Eric Stokes. If you love the corners compared to the wide receivers in the draft, well, maybe then, you don't do that. Maybe then you end up re-signing Rashid Shaheed. But to me, I don't know if you're going to be able to do both unless one of those players does go for a little bit cheaper. Do I think that the interest is there from the Raiders' standpoint on Shaheed? Yes, I do. But I also think that it's a narrative that's being carried because Rashid Shaheed was traded for by Clint Kubiak in this offense. And I wonder, did they just feel that Shaheed helped them in that situation where I don't know if they're going to look at Rashid Shaheed as the same player in Las Vegas. I think Darian Porter, Eric Stokes would be a really good combination. And then Shaheed, where he's probably a little bit more of that wide receiver too, and we still need to go out and add another person. I mean, don't get me wrong. If we still went out and got Eric Stokes, we'd still need to add another corner in my book. But the defense, I think it's got a little bit more missing pieces on it compared to the offensive side of the football. But then again, your biggest investment this offseason is Fernando Mendoza. If Fernando Mendoza, if you feel Rashid Shaheed is critical for the development of Fernando Mendoza, forget everything I just said and go out and get him. The cool part about this offseason, with the amount of money that we have, you can have these types of conversations. You can have these types of debates. And who knows? Maybe we can end up doing both. Rashid, Eric Stokes. Those are the reasons, though, why I personally would go with Eric Stokes over signing Rashid Shaheed. I want the Raiders to try to get a bigger name wide receiver in free agency. Alec Pierce. If it's not Pierce, then I'm looking at Romeo Doubs. I'm looking at Rashid Shaheed, and then we move from there. All right, coming up next here on this show, the Maxx Crosby trade latest, and then a player that, according to Jeremy Fowler, the Raiders are interested in potentially trading for. Once I get done with this video, I'll probably put out another little video on the Raiders Report YouTube channel, kind of breaking it down, why they could potentially trade for that said player. Before I get into that, though, huge shout out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. On Prize Picks, how you play is up to you, and if you want that flexibility, choose a flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you're looking for the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. It's available in all 50 states. It's super simple to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players' stats, and if you get your picks right, you can cash in. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks accepts most major payment methods, making deposits into your account quick and easy this sports season. So, download the Prize Picks app today. Make sure that you use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Let's keep it moving here on this Graziano Fowler article. And this next write-up around Maxx Crosby is from Jeremy Fowler. And he says, it's somewhat quiet on the Maxx Crosby front. This is a layered discussion because a team source said a few weeks ago that Crosby's chances of returning were relatively small. So that's Fowler saying that there was a source inside of this Las Vegas Raiders organization that told him the chances of Crosby returning to the Raiders was small. You got to think about that, right? Because I don't really think that we've heard that too much. But he doesn't plan to request a trade. That's one of the biggest things that I think possibly could be stated in this Jeremy Fowler article. Because I think Clint Kubiak and John Spytek have made it pretty damn clear that they don't want to move on from Maxx Crosby, that they plan on keeping him, and that they want him to be a part of this organization. I've said it probably 100 times. I think the only way that Maxx Crosby is traded from the Raiders is if Maxx Crosby himself asks for that trade. Or if some team, I don't know, the Chicago Bears, just throws an insane offer, it's just an insane offer that's bigger than the Micah Parsons deal, well, then I actually do think that the Raiders would entertain the idea, and then I think that they would move on from Maxx. But I want to be very clear. The Raiders aren't going to get a Micah Parsons level type of deal for Maxx Crosby. If there is one thing also I will say, based on the information I got from the Combine, the Las Vegas Raiders were 100% correct to shut down Maxx at the end of that season. His surgery, 3 to 4 months, and I know Rappaport's talked about it a little bit. It's going to be a longer one. But one of the biggest reasons why I really don't think that that type of a trade is going to happen is because teams will not be able to clear Maxx probably until June. So why is a team going to give up a Micah Parsons level type of deal for a player that's not going to be medically cleared until June? It doesn't really happen. Now, I'm not saying that Maxx won't get traded all year. If the Raiders are bad at the NFL trade deadline, you're probably going to see a Maxx Crosby deal go down. Because I think by that point, Maxx is going to be like, dude, I've had it. I've waited around long enough. I want to win this season. I think everybody in Maxx's camp knows Crosby wants to win this season. I think the Raiders know that Maxx Crosby wants to win this season. But you're not going to get a Micah Parsons level type of trade for him. So if Fowler is reporting that Maxx doesn't plan to request a trade, that tells me that I don't think Maxx Crosby is going to end up getting dealt. And we really haven't heard that because, I was asking a lot of NFL media members. I asked Diana Rossini. I was looking her dead in the eyes and I go, what have you heard about Maxx? And it was nothing recent. Again, it was like everything that we heard a few months ago. Jay Glazer was asked by Simone Rader at the Super Bowl, like, what have you heard recently for you to say what you did at the Super Bowl? And he was like, nothing. It was back in I think he said it was like back in September, some shit that he heard. So now, I talked to Fowler and I said, I want to say it was either Tuesday or Wednesday, one of those days, and it was about Crosby. And I was like, what are you hearing? And it was kind of silent. It's kind of like what he's saying right here. Now, he did make it very clear to me that he thought the number one team to trade for Maxx was the Chicago Bears. Like, I asked him, I said, what's the number one team? Without hesitation, he said Chicago. And then he had to kind of think of a second team. So I do wonder if the Bears are the top team to try to make a deal for number 98. But this reporting here by Fowler is extremely important for Raiders fans because we've heard the media pushing Maxx trade left and right, left and right. This is Fowler telling you, and I spoke to Fowler this week. Fowler is saying that he is being told that Maxx Crosby doesn't plan to request a trade. That's a big one because if that's true, I don't see Maxx getting dealt this offseason. Because the only way I think Maxx gets dealt this season is if Maxx Crosby wants to be traded. And based on that report, I don't think Maxx Crosby wants to get traded. Let's keep it moving here with Fowler. He says he's tight with Raiders owner Mark Davis and probably wouldn't garner a Micah Parsons-like trade package, 2 firsts and a key player. He wants to win, which might not be in the cards for Las Vegas in 2026. Some teams I've spoken to believe he will remain with the Raiders for now. Quote, why would you trade him? One GM asked. Quote, he's a premier player at a premium position, adding an executive from an NFC team. Quote, I think the price is too high. I'm not sure they really want to move him at this point, but that could change. At least a dozen teams have expressed cursory to strong interest in a few weeks. So, sorry, I'm not always the best with words. So I think what he's saying there is at least a dozen teams have shown interest in Maxx Crosby, which I don't think that that's surprising. He's one of the best players in the NFL at a premium position at edge, and people know that you're going to get 110% from him. I get he's 29 years old. He's coming off a major surgery on that knee. Yet again, that knee's starting to flare up a little bit, but that report from Fowler made it sound like to me that he didn't think Maxx Crosby was going to ask to be traded, which again, very, very important. Let's wrap up today's show with some more trade rumors, and it's around Tremaine Edmunds. Listen to this. One player who has strong trade value and a decent chance to be dealt is Bears linebacker Tremaine Edmunds. The Titans, Raiders, Giants are among teams interested in the high-end linebackers. So that's, Fowler is saying that the Raiders are interested in high-end linebackers, and that shouldn't shock anybody because Rob Leonard, 3-4 defense, Devin White, Landon Roberts, Jamal Adams, all going to be free agents. We need some extra linebackers on this roster, and if you're not going to draft them all, if you're not going to sign them all, going out and trading for a guy is a very interesting option. And Tremaine Edmunds is only 27 years old, but 8 years in the NFL. That's a lot of playing experience for a 27-year-old. You remember, like when he came in, he was 19. It was him and his brother. They were so young coming out of Virginia Tech, freak athletes. I remember that was literally the very, very first NFL draft that I covered here at Chat Sports. So very interesting. He was granted permission to seek a trade earlier this week, and he wasn't the only Bears player that was gifted permission. Gervon Dexter, big-time defensive tackle, also interested. He was also, granted permission. And I think that the Raiders could be interested in him. Why? He spent 2 seasons with our new defensive line coach, Travis Smith, in Chicago. The Raiders, 3-4 defense. We need a big boy on the interior. He's 6'6". He's like 340 pounds. I think that would be a really good fit. I will admit, trading for Tremaine Edmunds does make me a little bit nervous. He's expected to be owed $15 million. It's a little bit rich for my blood for Edmunds, who, again, really good player. $15 million, though, for a linebacker. I think Tremaine Edmunds is one of those guys where the name value is there. The production, he's a good player. Now, I've talked to some guys here at Chat Sports where they think that he plays a lot better than sometimes what he gets credit for. And some of the numbers I don't love, like the PFF numbers aren't great, but then again, PFF is not the all-end be-all. I do think that we need more linebackers that can do it all. And if you're the silver and black, and if you're confident in Tremaine Edmunds at 27 years old, maybe this guy's about to hit his prime. And if you think he's about to hit his prime, you go make the deal. But $15 million for the amount of needs that we have, I would like that to be, I don't want that to be anything higher than pick 134. The Raiders have 3 fourth-round picks. If Tremaine Edmunds is 5th round, 6th round, I like the deal because I really do think the only reason why Chicago is moving on from him is from a financial standpoint. But I don't want the Raiders to really give up anything higher than a 4th-round pick at 134 for Tremaine Edmunds. All right, y'all, I'm hopping on out of here. I will be back in the studio tomorrow at Chat Sports. I don't know if I'm going to plan on going live tomorrow. It's just we got a lot of stuff to catch up on at the studio. Obviously, I will be live on Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, but just be a little bit flexible with me today, and I only say that because, again, today's Alex and I's 60-year anniversary. I haven't seen her for a whole week, so today is going to be a nice little family day for me, her, and our dog, Chuck. Obviously, if any other Raiders news happens, I will do my best to keep you guys up to date, but if any big-time breaking news happens, I'm probably going to wait until tomorrow to be able to really cover a lot of that news. Now, if there's anything important around the Raiders, I will do my best to get you a video, but in terms of going live today, probably won't be able to go live because, again, today's our 6-year anniversary, though. Technically, it's on February 29th, but she'll get mad at me for saying that. So, all right, y'all, peace out. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video, and hopefully you appreciated my coverage and my entire Chat Sports team's coverage of the NFL Combine all week. It was truly, truly an unforgettable week. I can't wait to go back next season, but also at the same time, feels good to be home. It feels really, really good to be home. I'm excited to get back into the Chat Sports studios tomorrow, and I'm excited to get back to work, talking all things draft, talking all things free agency, and I'm really excited to be able to hang out with y'all live soon on the Raiders Report. All right, y'all. If you haven't already, make sure you guys click the subscribe button right here. I'm telling you, no matter what, Raiders news, Raiders community, if you're looking for stuff around the silver and black, I hope that you know I'm going to be your guy. Then on top of that, YouTube's going to recommend one of these 2 videos over here. Essentially, if you made it this far in this video, then you're going to enjoy one of those right there.